dumarami ang kaso ng mga wala pang 15 taong gulang na nanganak mula 2015 hanggang 2018. Batay ito sa National Demographic and Health Survey o NDHS. At dahil dito ay isinusulong sa Senado na isama sa mga kurikulum ng mga estudyante ang paggamit ng mga contraceptives o birth control. Ang tanong, pabor naman kaya dito ang mga magulang? Iyan po ang tinutukan ni Iel Rojas at Gabriel Calci.
Mahigit 108 milyon na ang populasyon ng Pilipinas at patuloy itong lumulobo. Base sa 2017 National Demographic and Health Survey, sa Pilipinas, 70% ng mga babaeng may edad na 15 hanggang 19 na taon ay nabuntis na. 7% naman sa mga nasabing minor de edad ang nakapanganak na. Kung titignan mula 2015 hanggang 2018, pababa ang bilang ng mga 15 hanggang 18 years old na nanganak. Pero ang nakakabahala, dumarami naman ang mga mula pang 15 taong gulang na nanganganak.
Sa survey, nakitang 2% ng mga teenager na babae sa bansa ay nakipagtalik na bago pa sila maging 15 years old. Kaya naman si Senator Risa Hontiveros ay isinusulong nga ang isang panukalang pumipigil sa pagbuntis ng teenager sa bansa. Sa Prevention of Adolescent Pregnancy Act of 2020, ipinasasama sa mga kurikulum ng mga estudyanteng may edad 10 hanggang 21 taon ang paggamit ng contraceptive. Ngunit si Senator Tito Soto ay nag-aalangan dito.
Ngayon, kung babalikan ang ating katarungan, payag naman kaya dito ang mga magulang? Ang ilang mga magulang ay umaayon at payag na ituro sa kanilang mga anak ang tungkol sa birth control. Ngunit kung sumasang-ayon ang mga magulang at ating gobyerno, paano naman kaya ang ating simbahan? Ikaw, kayo, ano ang masasabi ninyo? Ito po si Faye Ramos,
Iel Rojas,
Gabriel Calci,
hatid sa inyo ang pinakasariwang balita.
What is contraception?
Contraception. Di ba ginagamit yun to prevent pregnancy? A woman can get pregnant if a man's sperm reaches one of her eggs. Contraception tries to stop this from happening by keeping the egg and the sperm apart and stopping egg production.
Maraming methods niyan like pills, condoms, implants, and UIDs.
What is contraception? Hindi ba anti-life ang mga contraceptive? Hindi ba kasalanan yan? Isn't it the same with abortion?
The ethical questions about birth control have been a topic of debate for a long time. All of the world's major religions promote responsible parenthood, but when it comes to methods, the consensus often dissolves.
There is an ethical consideration about how the availability of birth control encourages couples to engage in premarital sex, and subsequent ramifications that can include unplanned pregnancy, compounded by leading one to consider the moral ethical issue of abortion.
How contraceptives work, specifically the contraceptive methods that involve the changing of the lining of the uterus to prevent implantation from occurring, creates an ethical or moral issue for some people. Most people believe that life begins at conception, whereas others believe it begins at implantation.
The ethical issue develops for individuals who believe that life begins at conception. When contraceptive methods fail to prevent ovulation or fertilization, the changing of the uterine lining used to prevent the fertilized egg or life from implementing in the uterine wall, it is this action that leaves people believing they have crossed an ethical boundary.
Now that we are on to the topic about the morality of contraception and birth controls, what are the arguments that support contraception and what are the arguments that are against it?
There are many positive reasons why people believe that it is right to allow others to practice birth control. First, contraception is not unethical because it benefits human rights. It's necessary for procreative liberty. People's autonomy and freedom to control their lives are severely limited if they are not allowed to choose whether or not to have children. Second, contraception is not wrong because it is beneficial to one's health. It reduces the number of possible abortions by preventing the conception of unwanted children. It allows women whose health would be jeopardized if they had children to continue having sex. Condom use aids in the prevention of sexually transmitted diseases and HIV. Third, contraception is not bad because it benefits the entire family. It prevents families from having children they cannot support. It allows people to have fewer children than they desire. And it helps improve marriage because it allows couples to enjoy sexual activities without worrying about having a child. Women should be able to choose whether or not to participate in these activities. As a result, any restriction on birth control constitutes sexual discrimination. Birth control restrictions are thus a denial of women's rights to sexual autonomy. Fourth, contraception is not harmful to women because it provides them with benefits. Pregnancy and childbearing have a much greater impact on women than on men. Lastly, contraception is not a bad idea because it has demographic advantages. It allows for population control around the world, which protects the environment and reduces poverty.
On the other hand, there are numerous arguments in opposition to using contraception or birth control. Some people believe contraception is inherently wrong because it is unnatural, anti-life, considered a form of abortion, and separates sex and reproduction. Some also believe that contraception has negative consequences because it poses health risks, prevents the conception of potential human beings, and may lead to population decline. Others believe that contraception leads to immoral behavior because it makes it easier for people to have sex outside of marriage, and that it leads to widespread sexual immorality. What makes contraception unnatural? Having sexual relation naturally leads to the birth of a child. Interfering with this is unethical. As a result, birth control is inherently wrong. This argument is based on two other concepts. To begin with, the universe's processes serves a purpose. Opponents argue that this is a religious idea, not a secular one. Second, interfering with the universe's natural order is wrong. Opponents argue that humans constantly disrupt the natural order of the universe. As a result, birth control is only a bad interference with the natural order of things if it has a negative outcome. What makes contraception anti-life? The premise of this argument is that life is a good thing. Those who hold this viewpoint argue that contraception is morally wrong because life is a fundamental good. It is a good thing. Those who use contraception do so with the intent of preventing a new life from being born. Why does contraception carry health risk? Contraception can harm a person's health in two ways, either through the contraceptive side effects or because using contraception allows people to have more sexual partners, increasing the risk of contracting a sexually transmitted disease. Some forms of contraception have been shown to have negative health consequences, while others have not. Does using contraceptives really makes it easier for people to have sex outside of marriage? This is especially true because sexual activity without contraception carries a significant risk of pregnancy, which most people who have sex outside of marriage would consider a deterrent.
But what does philosophy say about the moral issue of contraception? How is ethics related to the use of contraception? What about our religion? Does the church favor this? Is the use of contraceptives morally right? Multiple points of view, including Christian ethics, consequentialism, and Kantian ethics, must now be discussed and considered in order to reach conclusion whether or not the use of contraceptive methods is ethically justifiable. In today's world, different Christian churches hold opposing viewpoints on whether or not birth control should be used, because these churches believe that having sex outside of marriage is morally wrong. They believe that abstaining from sex is morally superior to having sex and using birth control. In today's world, different Christian churches hold opposing viewpoints on whether or not birth control should be used, because these churches believe that having sex outside of marriage is morally wrong. They believe that abstaining from sex is morally superior to having sex and using birth control. Contraception should be limited to married couples who are using it to control the size and spacing of their family. They frequently teach that using contraception to prevent children from being born is not a good idea. Within Catholic teachings, natural law arguments are commonly used to condemn unnatural and therefore immoral acts such as birth control. It follows that the Bible is the inspired, error-free, and revealed Word of God. Thus, as birth control conflicts with the path of conception, It goes against the natural order of God and is therefore not ethically justifiable. Meanwhile, utilitarians follow a moral system, the greatest happiness principle, that each person should aim to maximize happiness and minimize pain for both the individual and sum of individuals in a community. Someone who holds a utilitarian view would say that in order to bring about the most happiness, birth control is necessary. Its exclusion would inherently lead to an increase in population, resulting in a decrease in available resources and ultimately an escalation of poverty rates. Additionally, some forms of birth control can be used to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted infections and diseases, alleviating further possible sources of pain. Therefore, the use of birth control would ultimately maximize happiness for the larger majority in the future. Moving on to the Kantian ethics, Immanuel Kant had the belief that it is not requisite for human beings who marry to make for them, and enjoyment in the reciprocal use of the sexual endowments is an end of marriage. Thus, when following the position of Kantian ethics, following the maxim of agape, it is ethically justifiable to use birth control as it is proven to be the most loving option.
Ultimately, we believe that if birth control results in every child being a wanted child, better healthier lives for women along with reducing extreme poverty, it must be ethically justifiable. It brings the most happiness and the least pain, following the utilitarian view, and is the most loving option following Kantian ethics. The Catholic view is based solely on religious premises. As there is no evidentiary support to back up these premises, the accuracy of the conclusion cannot be deduced, and the argument only holds sound to those with Catholic beliefs. Therefore, due to the points raised, we believe that birth control is ethically justifiable.